I wish you could have lived forever. You never heard of my #1 personal conservation hero because she was a woman at the wrong time. A woman at the wrong time, she was out trying to save redwoods before women had the right to vote. Laura was born in 1867, long before women could vote, and she loved playing in Carson Woods, this beautiful old growth forest not far from her home in Loleta, California. When she heard that that forest was going to be logged, she joined women's groups and talked to kids and got them to write letters to the president, did whatever she could to save her childhood playground, a place that looked very much like this. But it didn't work, and by the end of World War I, Carson Redwoods was gone. This created a conservation activist monster in Laura Mahan. Laura belonged to a lot of women's groups, and at the time, those women's groups were only allowed to talk about two things: early childhood education and gardening. But Laura Mahan was like, forestry is gardening. And the other women like, yeah, that's right, it is, huh? So they started doing forest preservation. She even got the California Federation of Women's Clubs to come have one of their big rich lady meetings in a little tiny whaling logging town called Eureka. And those women came for a walk here. And they put up $45,000, which was a lot of money back then. And it was matched with some other donations. And they bought this land from Pacific Lumber. Pacific Lumber was a company that went on to be famous all through the 80s and 90s for clear cutting. And back then, they even had like a bad relationship with the very first conservationists. They tried to clear cut through the forest the women's clubs were trying to buy and put a railroad through so they could just log some other properties beyond it. But Laura wasn't having that. Laura climbed to the top of this stump while the loggers were logging. A lot of these guys were immigrants from Norway and Portugal, didn't speak English, and then here comes this lady in this long black dress, you know, all the way down. Because, you know, back in the day, women weren't allowed to show their wrists. That was sexy. Like, ooh. So she was in her long black dress, and she was like, stop. You better not. She didn't do all that. She was just like, stop. We're in the process of buying this land. I'm not moving. I'm going to get in front of the trees. If you guys smash me, I'm rich and well known. My husband's a lawyer, and you will get caught. They were like, ooh, that doesn't sound good. And so they stopped. And a court did an injunction because they weren't supposed to be logging here, and they stopped that logging, and Laura saved this forest. And there's a plaque out here in the Mahan Plaque Grove. It wasn't the only forest she saved. Laura's credited with saving like up to 1/4 of all old growth redwood trees. How come you haven't heard of her? How come you haven't heard of her? Because she was a woman at the wrong time. Thanks, Laura, for everything you did for saving the redwoods, for making it easier for conservationists like me, and making it easier for all of us to be able to enjoy the old growth forest.